RGB vote or RGB?
Are you leaving? You're not leaving.
So how are you going to introduce?
I'm gone, dude.
So,
I'll just say
can you
thank you for watching.
simultaneously enter the toolbox and the chat?
Tonight, local coverage in Hidalgo County.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, move the screen.
Yeah, Facebook.
This.
Yeah. No, that's not it. The one up there.
And if
Okay, that allows you to talk to us,
RGB vote,
viewers on,
RGB vote singular.
without anybody else seeing.
Okay.
But I guess it takes away the toolbox. You can't do the lower third.
Yeah.
Okay, so forget it. We'll just have Andrea communicate with me via the Google Doc.
Okay.
All right, we good?
Yeah, we're ready to go. It's already on.
Okay.
Trump just won Missouri.
Everybody ready?
Yes, sir. Let's do this.
Danya, you ready? Sit up top.
What's wrong with Tanya?
That's already on.
She's
Listen,
hiding.
go.
Why?
She doesn't want to be in the frame.
Got it.
Oh,
Here we go. I think so.
okay. We didn't do mic test.
Oh, hold on. I got to go. One more instruction.
Where's it home? Oh. He started it already. He's coming back again. And here's I'm having trouble with. It's going off. It's going off.
As we're doing this, we need someone to monitor AP because the initial results come out. So you can monitor AP there?
Like through breaking news or?
I don't know that they're going to do a breaking news if they call the local rates.
Okay.
So,
I will tell Metro right now.
Mitchell,
Let's just,
you have
yeah,
access?
the AP exchange or AP?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll get someone right now
Okay.
just to start.
All right. What's the worst that can happen?
Here's the thing, I can't get him to be. We're good.
Good evening and welcome to the Monitor's live stream coverage of the 2016 presidential election brought to you by IBC Bank. My name is Carlos Sanchez and I'm editor of the Monitor. Our objective tonight is to get you the most accurate, up-to-date information regarding this historic election and to provide local context. In that spirit, several colleagues and I will be checking in throughout the evening with election updates. We'll also be talking to local, state, and national experts to help you understand the implications of this year's election. Here in Hidalgo County, it's been a dreary, sometimes rainy election day, but that does not seem to have dampened the enthusiasm of local voters. Although we've been getting reports of fewer election volunteers hawking last-minute votes outside of polling places, we are seeing evidence of a vigorous turnout inside the polling places. Voter turnout, in fact, has been a theme during early voting in Hidalgo County, which saw more than 41% of its 338,000 registered voters cast their ballots already. In fact, every day of this year's early voting period saw turnout exceed the same period 4 years ago. Of the top 15 most populous counties in Texas, Hidalgo ranked 13 in the voter turnout, according to the Secretary of State election records. Local turnout only exceeded Cameron and Nueces counties. Propelling voters to the polls are a bookend of contentious elections. At the top of the ballot is the presidential election, of course, pitting Democrat Hillary Clinton against Republican Donald Trump. And equally contentious, locally at least, has been the question at the bottom of the ballot. Proposition 1, a ballot initiative asking local voters to approve the creation of a healthcare district which would have its own taxing authority. Tonight, we'll also see a new member of Congress from this region as Representative Ruben Hinojosa steps down after having served more than 20 years in Congress. The race to replace him pits Democratic lawyer Vicente Gonzalez against Republican Selma Army veteran Tim Westley. Several legislative seats are also on the line tonight, with perhaps the most hotly contested being in District 41, in which incumbent Democrat Bobby Guerra is fending off a strong challenge by former McAllen School Board member Hilda DeShazio. Of course, we don't want this to be a one-way conversation, so we invite you to send comments or questions to us via Twitter with the hashtag RGVVotes or in the commenting section of the Monitor's Facebook page. At this point, I'd like to hand off to a couple of colleagues who will give you a broader overview of the most debated local race on the ballot, Proposition 1. Joining us is editorial page editor Sandra Sanchez and Monitor staff writer Noxie Lopez.
Good evening. I'm Sandra Sanchez with the Monitor, and I'm joined here with Noxie.
Hi, Sandra. Thank you for having me today.
Thanks for being here. We're so excited to be able to have this conversation with our Facebook audience as well as our Monitor audience, and on this historic election night. Primarily, we'd like to talk about Hidalgo County and proposition that has been garnering a lot of news. It's called Proposition 1, and it would, if voted, create a healthcare district in Hidalgo County. It would levy 8 cents and raise about $24 million. Noxie is the expert on this. What would that money go towards?
Well, basically, it would help fund medical care for those that don't have it, and also fund the medical school at UTRGV. So 2 approaches.
So those that don't have it, are you talking about indigent care? Are you talking about the working poor? How would this money be used?
That's a very good question. There's indigent and working poor are considered uninsured, but the indigent are the poorest of the poor. The best way I heard it explained to me is if you work at McDonald's and you make minimum wage, you are making too much money to be considered indigent. So you fall, you wouldn't qualify for the indigent care. The working poor are those that can't afford insurance through Obamacare.
This isn't the first time, however, that an initiative like this has tried to be passed in Hidalgo County, right? Didn't we try this again in 2014?
Yep, 2 years ago, and voters defeated it, and we're waiting to see what they're gonna vote like this year.
At the time, it was called a hospital district. However, now the name has changed to a healthcare district. And let's talk a little bit about some of the differences between then and now. As I understand it, if passed by voters, and it needs to be passed by a majority of voters, we're just here to explain it. We're not advocating for or against it, just want to help readers, listeners understand the difference. This current bill would allow 8 cents per $100 property valuation to go towards money to help hospitals fund indigent care, the UTRGV medical school, as well as some clinics with some outpatient care. In 2014, the cap was 25 cents. So it's a much lower cap.
Yeah, the cap 2 years ago was 75
cents, excuse me.
Yes.
So it's a much lower cap. And now it could go from 8 cents to 25 cents, but it wouldn't happen right away. It would take time.
No, there is a rollback provision that, the legislators that created this healthcare bill put in place, which they say would help keep taxes low. But at the end of the day, that 25 cent mark or that cap can go up, but it would take an election. We would have to first we would have to pass the district, and then we would have to have another election if we wanted to raise that cap to anything other than 25 cents or above 25 cents.
Opponents of this bill are very worried that it would exceed the 25-cent mark, however. But as you said, that could only happen if there was another election. And so we would have to do exactly what we're doing tonight. Go to the polls and vote it in if we wanted it to be raised above 25 cents, right?
Yes.
Okay. But it is a possibility.
It is.
And that's something that has really garnered some of those who have been against this provision from the outset, correct? Well,
a lot of people point to a high poverty rate in the county and the fact that a lot of people don't pay their taxes on time. So opponents of this district have often said, this is going to break the backs of the residents of Hidalgo County. And so that's one of their big issues that they've come up with, the taxes.
What are some of the safeguards that are put in place that would protect taxpayers if in fact this is passed? And it is too early to tell. We do not have any election results yet. The polls have not closed yet, or just closed. Excuse me. We have not had results yet. We're waiting to hear, and we'll break in if we do get some results. But some of the safeguards that will protect, how will for instance, the board be set up that would govern a healthcare district?
Well, the board would be appointed. Basically, it's a 10-member board, and you have each of the county commissioners would appoint one member, and then I believe McAllen would be able to appoint 2 members. The council would have to get together and, as the council, appoint 1 person or 2 people, McAllen, and then you have FAR, Edinburgh, and Mission, which would all have 1 appointee. So that would comprise the 10-member board.
And those cities were chosen because of their population size?
Yes.
Because according to the state statute, it just actually lists the largest city in Hidalgo County, and then the 2nd largest, 3rd largest, and 4th largest. And that's how we come up with those 4 cities: McAllen, FAR, Edinburgh, and Mission. Correct?
Yes. So this board would be in charge of creating a budget. And in that budget, state law says that you have to have a tax rate attached to it. And once that budget is, once they figure out what that budget would be like, they would have to go to the county commissioners, and the county commissioners would get to approve or not the budget.
So now we get to another big important element of this conversation, and that is the county commissioner's involvement in a healthcare district. The county judge would be on the board as well. He would have an appointment. And then the 4 county commissioners would also have an appointment to the board.
I believe he would be the tiebreaker, the county judge, if there was, if there was a tie somewhere. I think he would step in as the tiebreaker.
And then the county commissioners overall have final say-so in the budget, and they approve the budget, as they do currently with the drainage district and the community service administration and some other agencies that they oversee.
So they would still have some oversight over the district. But, the ones that would propose the budget would be that board of managers. So they do have a lot of say of how that money would be spent. But, that there is that safeguard in place for the commissioners to step in and say, if they don't agree with the tax rate or the way the budget was set, they could step in and say, we're not going to approve this. And then they'd have to go back to the drawing board.
So what are some of the biggest gains that we could get from a healthcare district?
Well, I think the biggest one would be expanding medical access to those that don't have insurance. Right now, I believe there are 250,000 people in Hidalgo County that don't have health insurance, but only a fraction, or about 5,000 of them, actually qualify for the indigent care services that the county currently runs. So the district would basically take that program that the county runs, and they would run it themselves, along with the other services that they could provide under the statute, like funding the medical school.
And this would be run like a business. There would be a director, an assistant director. They would have the right to levy bonds and create buildings and do what they need to do in order to grow this productive healthcare district.
Which scares a lot of people, the fact that they can go out there and look for bonds and things like that, because one of the big worries that I heard was, is this going to put us in debt? And nobody really knows the answer to that right now, because, there's no plan in place until a board of managers is appointed. And before that, the district has to pass.
One thing that is supposed to happen, however, is that the amount of money that the county spends currently for indigent care is supposed to be reduced by that same amount if they levy this tax. And so it's an estimated 3 cents, correct?
Well, the county judge told the Monitor a couple of weeks ago that, based on the calculations and what they're spending on indigent care, which is, I believe, $5.5 million, what they budget for the program, plus $1.4 million in operational costs. If you combine those 2 costs, that will equal to about 2.13 cents. Now, that might go up a little bit depending on this MOU that they signed, because the county currently spends or donates, I guess, $1 million to UTRGV School of Medicine. So if that responsibility is given to the district, then the county no longer has that responsibility. So they might factor that in when they cut the tax rate.
A lot of numbers, a lot of confusing conversations surrounding this. Some opponents say we're taxed enough already. We have 7 taxing entities in Hidalgo County, and this would just add to it, and enough is enough. Have you heard that sentiment?
Oh, God. Yes, absolutely. Yes. And, if we look back at other elections, we had the McAllen bond election. We've had other elections where, governmental entities are asking for money, and generally voters have struck them down. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how tonight plays out.
So far on social media and at the polls, what has been the flavor as far as those who are favoring Proposition 1 or opposing it?
I think that the ones who oppose the district have been the most vocal, but I don't know necessarily that it's because there are more opponents, or that, just like in the presidential race, those that support one candidate or the other are afraid to speak up sometimes because, social media can get pretty nasty, I guess you could say.
Well, you've been on the receiving end of some of that with some of the stories you've done. You've broken a lot of information on this. You've helped to explain it and break it down. And I'm sure that our readers appreciate that. If you have any questions about Proposition 1, we encourage you to participate in our discussion. Write to us, #RGVVote. Join us on our Facebook live chat here, or go to our Monitor website. And post a question. Ask us what you'd like to know. I know the polls just closed, but you might have some information about this.
And it's a very complicated issue. That's, it's not, healthcare is very local in Texas. There is no one size fits all, because a lot of it depends on the resource of the community and the partnerships that the leadership create with, with the stakeholders. So it's a very complex issue. Hospital financing, all of that, and I certainly had to learn a lot to be able to write, about the healthcare district. But,
just to give an example, when we ask for matching funds, people say, well, we get money from the federal government. Well, we do get money from the federal government, but it's not an even match. So we can't say if we put in $1, we'll get $1 back. It's a very complicated formula. It's like,
well, the 1115 waiver does give, if we put in $1, they'll give us that $1 plus another $1.13.
Yes.
So,
and all this money goes into our big pot here that we call healthcare, and that we have a lot of people who do need help. A lot of people who say they pay too many taxes. We hear both sides. We understand both sides, and we're very excited to figure out what the people of Hidalgo County are going to do with this initiative. Are they going to vote for it or against it?
It's a very uncertain time for healthcare, not just here in Hidalgo County, but across Texas. The 1115 waiver, which a lot of people describe as God sent, which actually multiplies local monies from the federal government. It's a program that could end. It was supposed to end at the end of August, but the federal government said, you know what, we're going to give Texas 1.5 years to figure it out because we didn't expand Medicaid. And that waiver was supposed to help the state expand those services, or the Medicaid services, but we haven't yet. So that's going to be a struggle between the state and the federal government, and local, governmental entities are kind of bearing the brunt of that fight right now.
A lot of unfunded mandates rolling down, and it all rolls down to the county level. But the bottom line is we do have a lot of people that live here in Hidalgo County, and we're all working to do the best for them.
Figure this out, because if this isn't going to be the solution, we need to find one.
Thank you. In other races, as we mentioned, the polls just closed, and we're expecting to get early voting results any minute now. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have been making their way across the country all day and scoring big wins in various states. It looks like Trump has already been projected to win West Virginia, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Indiana, Tennessee. and Hillary Clinton, Vermont, Connecticut, Maryland, Rhode Island, Delaware, just to name a few, as this night just gets going, as we just have many states that have just closed, and we expect to hear many more. Locally, we have some big races that we are watching. Aside from Proposition 1, of course, State District 41 pits incumbent R.D. Bobby Guerra, who has been in 2 terms, against former McAllen ISD Board of Trustee Hilda Garza de Chazo. And kind of relates to what we've been talking about, because Ms. Garza de Chazo has been running on an anti-Prop 1 position. Yep. And Bobby Guerra is the one who actually submitted the bill in the State House, the last legislature, for the possibility for the healthcare district. We look forward to much more news to come throughout the night. Absolutely. And many more people who have lots of things to say. So I think we've expended our time. Noxie Lopez, and say your full first name.
Naxieli Lopez.
It's a beautiful name. I can never pronounce it. We're going to wrap this up and pitch this back. Again, our hashtag RGV vote, if you would like to get in on the conversation.
Join us.
I'm Peter Rasmussen. I'll be with you throughout the night as well. Stay tuned. We'll have an interview with our editor, Carl Sanchez, will have an interview with Yvonne Ramon, the Hidalgo County Elections Administrator.
Mug to go with.
Okay.
I can come up.
Thank you.
Okay, go to Hidalgo County. Go to Hidalgo County.
Estamos on.
Nobody else can see this. We're ready.
Is it going? Mr. Ramon, are you ready? Yes? Where do I respond? Can you hear me?
Welcome back. This is Carlos Sanchez, editor of the Monitor newspaper. We have with us the County Elections Administrator for Hidalgo County, Yvonne Ramon. Ms. Ramon, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I guess the first question is, how was turnout on this election day?
It has certainly been busy. We still have polls that have not closed, and so until the last voter votes, we are not able to determine that election day amount. So we're all anxiously waiting.
Now, typically the polls close at 7 p.m. Is there a reason for the delay in closure of some of these polls?
Long lines, long lines.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
So that is good news.
That is good news, exactly.
We had heard reports earlier today of possibility of some electricity had gone out at some locations. Can you explain what happened there?
Sure. It's something that may happen, and so we're always prepared. And what happened is a 2-block radius in Edinburgh, because of the rain and the just the winds that were blowing, blew out some lights in a 2-block radius, and it happened to be South Middle School, one of our poll locations. So there was absolutely no delay. The judge went ahead and prepared the provisional ballots, and every voter that arrived at the poll location was able to vote.
Have you had any reports of any other problems this morning?
No, because of the rain, just our own VPN was a little slow. Some of our check-in, not our machines, but our check-in software was offline, online. Not a problem. The machines worked well. There were no issues with the actual voting taking place. So we are good to go and anxiously awaiting our poll locations to close.
Excellent. Now, Ms. Ramon, the Justice Department reported that they were sending out about 500 election watchers throughout 28 states, including Texas. Do you have any sense of whether any were present in South Texas?
No, not at all. We didn't have any of our judges report, although they are well versed in allowing inspectors, either from the state or the Department of Justice, to enter a poll location. So we may receive notification from them when they come to turn in their bins. But other than that, no one has reported any inspector at our poll locations. Not yet.
And the day began with some rain and lightning, and it was threatening all day. Do you have any discernible notice of impact that the weather had today on turnout?
No, perhaps because of that, the lines are long, although our community sometimes waits until they get out of work on the last day, possible day to cast their ballot. So we've seen this before, especially where we have local races. So we're prepared, and we only ask that our community be patient and that we do things the right way, which means that as soon as that last voter votes, we will be posting early voting results. We will be posting the mail ballots results, and then anxiously awaiting our election day.
Do you have any anticipated time on when these final polls may shut down?
Well,
is it minutes or is it hours away?
I would hope it's not hours. We're getting an opportunity right now to be in touch with them, and hopefully get. The last I heard, there were 70 voters in line. But that was a good half hour ago. So we'll check back with them and see where they're at Valley View.
Excellent. And in closing, tell me a little about early voting. The numbers seem to be very impressive this year around. Can you just walk us through what happened over that 2-week period?
Certainly. We had record-breaking over 140,000 Hidalgo County voters went out to vote during the early voting period. Surpassed 2012 by a very high margin. We were over 40%. In 2012, we were at about 32% with just about 100,000 voters. So we certainly did surpass our own expectations. We hope to, at the end, be way over 50%. Wouldn't it be wonderful, though, if we were to hit a 60% margin? But we don't know. We don't know, but we do know that more than likely we will surpass 2012. At the end of Election Day, we had almost 46% turnout during the 2012 general. So we'll see.
And I guess it's premature today to determine what Election Day itself was like in terms of turnout.
I know there's no way for us to know until that last voter votes and that those medias are brought into our office, and we anxiously await as well. So we'll be reporting as soon as we can.
Well, I'm sure you have a long night ahead of you, Ms. Ramon. I'd like to thank you for your time. This is Yvonne Ramon, the Election County's Administrator for Hidalgo County. Thank you again, ma'am.
Thank you.
And we'll be back later in about 10 minutes, actually, with an interview with nationally syndicated columnist Ruben Navarrete, talking about the issue that has surprised many this election cycle, and that is the high Hispanic voter turnout. So check back with us in about 10 minutes at about 7:35 p.m. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, there.
What was Rudy calling about?
Yes.
Welcome back to our live election coverage here in Hidalgo County. My name is Carlos Sanchez. I'm editor of the Monitor newspaper. If you had not tuned in earlier, we had a short interview with the elections administrator here in Hidalgo County, and she has indicated that poll lines are still intact, and therefore the polls will not close until everyone has had an opportunity to vote. Once those polls close, once every poll in Hidalgo County is shut down, then we will get early voting numbers that we had expected about 7:15, but which have been delayed because of the long lines, which is actually a good sign. Joining with me now is nationally syndicated columnist Ruben Navarrete. Mr. Navarrete has been a syndicated columnist and a member of the Monitor family for years now, and has a national perspective on what we are finding is a surprising phenomena this election cycle. Since the 1980s, there has been speculation and predictions that the Hispanic vote would really coalesce and become a major factor in political life here in America. Today, for the first time, there seems to be evidence in that direction. And Ruben, I'd love to, first off, thank you for joining us here in South Texas, and begin by asking what your impressions are of the Hispanic turnout this year.
Thank you for having me. It's really, as you say, very impressive. It's something a lot of folks have been waiting for. Significantly, this is not because of some strong voter registration model. It wasn't because an organization got out, knocked on doors, and dragged people to the polls. And it wasn't because you had a Latino surnamed candidate on a ballot that excited people. In a nutshell, the reason we're seeing this surge of Latino voters across the country is Donald Trump. Donald Trump has single-handedly done what someone like Willie Velasquez could not do, and that is to energize and mobilize Latinos to the polls, albeit to vote against him, to vote in favor of Hillary Clinton as a way of stopping him. But the numbers have really been extraordinary. We've seen so much in the last few weeks now in early voting, where a majority of the votes were coming from Hispanics, many votes from Hispanics. And today, the actual election day, you see a surge of Latino voting in some very critical states.
Ruben, you say something very significant, although slightly subtle, and it's the notion that Hispanics who are turning out to vote are turning out to vote against Donald Trump and not necessarily for Hillary Clinton. What are the implications of that?
Well, it's really a national phenomenon in the sense that there are many people who voted for Donald Trump to vote against Hillary Clinton, people of different backgrounds. You could find white males, working class white males in the Rust Belt states in Ohio or Michigan or Wisconsin who went to the polls despite the fact that they had questions and doubts about Donald Trump, but they knew they wanted to vote against Hillary Clinton. So this is really the opposite effect in the Southwest, where you have Latinos who are not enamored with Hillary Clinton. Let's be frank. She doesn't have a long record of service in our community. She doesn't have a lot she can point to. She has a very spotty record on immigration. As people in McAllen know very well, in 2014, when there was a surge of Central American refugees across the border into McAllen and into Hidalgo County, it was Hillary Clinton, who now pretends to be a friend of immigrants and refugees, who said, send them back without hearings, without asylum hearings and the like. So she has had a spotty record with Hispanics. She is not our favorite person. Donald Trump is someone we, I think, loathe in many cases. We want to see him defeated. And so Latinos are going to the polls not to vote for her, but to vote against him. Your question about long-term implications, it means that her support from Hispanics is a mile wide and an inch deep. It means that if it does come a day when there's a President Clinton, you're going to see a very interesting scenario where many Hispanics come to her and say, listen, don't get it wrong. Don't get it twisted. This is not a mandate. We didn't vote for you because we believe in you. We voted for you to stop Donald Trump. Now, what are you going to do for us?
Ruben, yesterday in one of the final polls that was taken in this race, a group called Latino Decisions interviewed, I think it was 6,000 respondents of Hispanic descent nationwide. And once again, among that group, the top concern voter issue among these people was immigration. To what extent do you think the turnout of Hispanic voters this time around will ultimately drive this issue of immigration, which has been elusive for every president since Ronald Reagan enacted reforms back in 1987?
Right, Carlos, you know very well that this is a complicated issue for the Latino community. If you give me 100 Latinos who say that immigration is a top issue, it could be that 50 of them mean to say that they want to have some path to legal status for the undocumented. And the other 50%, let's say they come from Hidalgo County or from county in Arizona near the border, or they come from San Diego County along the border, and they want stronger border restrictions. They actually are concerned with border security in that respect. So just because Latinos say that immigration is a top issue doesn't necessarily doesn't mean they agree with me that we ought to have a pathway to legal status for the undocumented, as I believe. I think that it's a complicated mess. In Arizona, we saw this. When Arizona passed a racial profiling law, we were surprised and befuddled to find that there were nice comadres and tias down on the southern border in Arizona who supported the law because they were concerned with the impact that drug traffickers were having in their community and neighborhoods. So it is a complicated issue. I think if Hillary Clinton is elected president, you may see some movement on this. And frankly, if Donald Trump is elected president, you may see movement on this issue of a different sort.
Now, there was some disappointment when Hillary Clinton earlier this year made the announcement that her running mate would be Tim Kaine of Virginia. And there was great hopes for people like Julian Castro, who is Secretary of Health and Human Services right now.
Right.
Do you think that a Clinton presidency, given the Hispanic turnout, frankly, even a Trump presidency, has implications for the appointment of Hispanics to cabinet level positions?
I'd say that's true in both cases. I think that what we have seen in the past, whether it be a President Bill Clinton or President George W. Bush, typically by the time they come forward with their 15 cabinet selections, you'll see 3 is a very high number of Hispanics. You'll see 3 Hispanics on the cabinet at any given time. That's sort of standard. It's become standard. 4 would be extraordinary and positive. 2 would be a little less than we expect. Typically, it's been 3, a fifth of the cabinet being Hispanic. But to your point about Tim Kaine, I think Democrats have a right to be really disappointed in Mr. Kaine and Senator Kaine today. Here's what's happened. If you take a look at the polls, right now, today, at this moment, Virginia is neck and neck. Tim Kaine has not helped this ticket at all in his home state of Virginia. Tim Kaine has been in politics his entire career. He was a city councilman in Richmond. He was the mayor of Richmond. He was the governor of Virginia, lieutenant governor of Virginia, the governor of Virginia, and now senator from Virginia. Virginians know Tim Kaine. Now it just turns out they don't like him. So yeah, they know him, they just don't like him. So thanks a lot, Hillary Clinton. Not only did they not choose Julian Castro, but we should be wearing T-shirts saying all we got, was this lousy vice presidential candidate named Tim Kaine.
Ruben, any other implications that you foresee given today's, what I'm going to say, historic turnout based on early voting numbers, at least here in South Texas? The drive and the strength of the Hispanic turnout, what implications beyond political appointees do you see?
Well, think about this for a second, Carlos. When you and I first met many, many years ago, you're working for the Washington Post. And now the paper that now syndicates my column. If you think about the Washington Post from the vantage point of that newspaper in that city of Washington, for most of your lifetime and most of my lifetime, politics in this country has been black and white. The paradigm has been black and white. And African Americans were typically thought of as the foundation, really the firewall, the Democratic firewall in the Democratic coalition. You can't get past African Americans. Something interesting happened in this election. African American turnout across the board nationally is down. It's down significantly. It's down in the South. It's down because Hillary Clinton is not Barack Obama. And what has happened is Latino numbers have surged. Those two things together introduced today on this date a new paradigm. And the new paradigm is no longer black and white. It's now going to be white and brown. It's now going to be Latinos are coming into their own, and they have now they've taken the place of African Americans as being that firewall within the Democratic Party.
Now, I know you spent part of your career in Texas, Ruben, but you're now an outsider from California. Yeah. If the paradigm has shifted from brown to white, what implications do you see for Texas itself?
I think that people like Greg Abbott and other Republicans are going to have to do much more of what Abbott started to do, and that is more of what Cory Gardner, the senator from Colorado, has done. Go out and put ads out there in Spanish, tell Latinos that you have a vision and they're part of it. Recognize us not as a separate group to be pandered to, but really part of the American mainstream. People, I think, are still confused as to why it is that Latinos loathe Donald Trump. Why do we hate Donald Trump? I'll tell you. It has nothing to do with building a wall or the fact that he wants border security. He took a proud group of people who have fought and died on foreign soil in every war since the Revolutionary War. We have paid our dues. We have buried our sons and daughters at Arlington. We have hired people. We have employed people. We have started businesses. And we have paid a lot of taxes. And he took this group of people and he tried to marginalize us. He tried to make us seem as if we were not real Americans. He said we were criminals and rapists. He said our grandfathers and grandparents who came here were criminals and rapists. And he made this mistake that has been made so many times in American history, where he tried to take this immigrant group and deem them inferior to the American host. And that is ultimately the line he crossed. And that's what he's paying for tonight. So the message in Texas going forward is, let's have conversations about border security. Let's talk about those things, but be very careful that you don't make this into a contest where you make Latinos and Mexicans and Mexican Americans feel that they are somehow inferior to white Texans.
Nationally syndicated columnist Ruben Navarrete, we thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us tonight here on election night.
My pleasure. Have a good night.
And with that, again, we await early voting results. An earlier interview with the elections commissioner here in Hidalgo County said that because of long voting lines, there's been a delay in the closure of all polls in Hidalgo County. And she said until all polls are closed, no early voting results will be released. So we look forward to spending a few minutes in getting those early results. And until then, we will be back and interviewing some other candidates and some statewide experts on tonight's historic election. Thank you.
Hey, Carlos.
Hey, how are you? We're on air now, okay?
Sorry, I lost you there for a second.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome back to the Monitor Newsroom. My name is Carlos Sanchez. I'm editor of the Monitor newspaper. As I'd indicated earlier, we are still awaiting preliminary results from early voting here in Hidalgo County. They have not been released yet because there were long lines at many of the polls in Hidalgo County. And Elections Administrator Ivan Ramon said that no early results would be released until all polls have shut down. In the meantime, we are getting results that are starting to pour in from around the rest of the state. And I'd like to introduce you all to a Texas Tribune reporter based in Austin, whose name is Aman Bethea. Aman, how are things going in Austin tonight?
As crazy as they are in Hidalgo.
So the news of South Texas, at least, is one, the high voter turnout, which is historic numbers here in Hidalgo, as is other locales throughout Texas. But the other component of that is the high Hispanic voter turnout. Are you seeing evidence of that around the rest of the state?
We're seeing long lines around the state, polls that have stayed open late. And, right here in Austin at the University of Texas, there's a popular polling place that the lines were at one point over 2 hours. So we've been seeing this all over the state, issues of long lines and lots of people voting.
And what do you think is suggestive of the high Hispanic turnout? As I've told another guest, the prediction for the Hispanic voters has been around since 1980. But this is the first year that seems that there's some merit to that prediction. And I'm wondering if you're seeing evidence of that in the rest of Texas as well.
We're seeing signs of Hispanic turnout. I'm not so far the early vote that's come in, which is scattered around the state, seems to show that this is going to be the closest election in 20 years in terms of the presidential race, but that Trump is still going to win, and Texas is going to stay weakly. That's what early signs are showing, and if that happens, that'll show that Trump was very unpopular and that probably Hispanic out was helpful in shoring up her base. So that's kind of what we're seeing so far.
Now, I don't know if you've had any access to exit polling or the opportunity to interview people, but one guest earlier suggested that a lot of the Hispanic vote is more of an anti-Trump vote than a pro-Hillary vote. And I'm wondering if that rings true with you as well.
To an extent, that's true, although I remember the 2008 primary where the Hispanics went strongly for Hillary Clinton over Barack Obama. So she has ties to that community that I think are probably helping her in this election.
And what do you think are the implications for the rest of the state in terms of other races? Obviously, the national race, the presidential race, is one in which people thought Texas would turn purple. There is evidence that it's headed in that direction. But does that have any kind of implications for statewide elected office over the next couple of years?
Statewide, that's hard to say. In 2008, the Democratic primary in Texas was huge, and Democrats were really hopeful that they were going to hold on to those voters, and they did not. As we know, in 2010, they did not. And so the question is, can Democrats capitalize on some momentum they're getting this year, which is really happening completely outside of any of their efforts? It's really, you're right, it does seem to be a very big anti-Trump vote. And the question is whether you can keep those people engaged in 2 years. I think part of it's going to be key is candidates that are willing to run, that are attractive to those communities, that are seen as viable. If the Castros were to run, perhaps, they're a very well-known brand. If they could run, that might make a difference. But I've also heard rumors that they might not be willing to run because they don't think Texas is ready. There's all this kind of speculation going on. So if a Democrat were to run that didn't really excite people or seemed viable, I think that would probably wipe out a lot of the momentum you're hearing about today.
Now, that's for statewide races. I'm just wondering if Texas has become so gerrymandered at the legislative level that there's any hope to recapture by Democrats either the House or the Senate over the next decade or so?
That's a lot's going to depend on redistricting, which happens in a few years. But frankly, that does not look good. In the Senate, there is essentially one swing district, truly, maybe two, but not a whole lot. So, and the rest of the districts are painted so that majority of them go to the Republicans. In the House, it's a little more fluid. Democrats are probably going to gain a few seats tonight in the House, but Republicans are still going to have a clear majority. So Democrats will have kind of more numbers to fight with, but nothing. They're not moving past any significant threshold. Republicans, at one point a few years ago, they had over 100 members. They had a supermajority, but they don't now. So them losing a few seats doesn't really hurt them too bad.
I know it's still early in the evening, but I'm wondering if you're seeing any surprises thus far.
I think there was, in Dallas County, there were, it's a very blue county at this point, and there are several Texas House seats that are up for grabs. And there was a thought that several Republican incumbents were going to be in trouble. And the early votes so far are suggesting only a couple of them are in trouble. Two others seem to be hanging on, which is surprising. There was a lot of thought that just there was going to be this blue wave over Dallas County, and all those incumbents were going to be dead. And we don't know the final outcome yet, but just the early voting suggests that their support is stronger than expected.
Okay, well, thank you. Iman Bethea, the writer for the Texas Tribune, we appreciate your time tonight, and we look forward to talking to you another time.
Thank you.
For all you viewers, again, we still await results from Hidalgo County, early voting results. Long lines have precipitated the need to keep polling places open, and the elections administrator has said until all polling places are closed, early voting results will not be forthcoming, but they are expected very soon. In the meantime, please join us in about 15-20 minutes when we sit down and have an interview with County Judge Ramon Garcia. Thank you. Welcome back to the Monitor Newsroom. My name is Carlos Sanchez. I'm editor of the Monitor. And we finally have some early voting results that I want to go over with you and ask our distinguished guest here a little bit about those. First off, in the race to replace our existing Congressman Ruben Hinojosa, Vicente Gonzalez is now winning 69% to 25% over his Republican opponent, Tim Wesley. Senator Chuy Hinojosa is holding his seat handily, 68% to 31% against Republican Velma Arellano. And what seemed to be one of the most highly contested races, State Representative Bobby Guerra is holding his own as well. He's at 55% to 44% against Hilda DeShaggio in early returns that have just been released. But perhaps the biggest surprise of the night is Proposition 1, the most contentious ballot on the most contentious election on the local ballot. Opponents of Proposition 1 have voted in 72% to 27%. Joining me now is Hidalgo County Judge Ramon Garcia. Welcome, Judge Garcia.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you for having me here this evening.
I guess the first question, historically, when early voting results are released in Hidalgo County, is there some magic number that basically is insurmountable with Election Day returns?
Well, there generally is, depending on the race, depending on the individuals and depending on where they're from and what the turnout was on election night and or on election day. But here, I mean, every measure that was voted on, and the margin between the Democrats and the Republicans is soundly there. So I don't see anything changing.
Don't see anything changing on that front.
Not at all.
What about with Proposition 1?
Oh, that one, clearly, there's not going to be a change.
There's not going to be change. So that is an insurmountable lead as it relates now.
Yeah, I mean, we had an incredible turnout. We need to congratulate our Hidalgo County residents for caring enough to come out in the numbers that they did. 139,000 people voted, early voting. I mean, our last prior record was 2012, when we had a total of early voting on election day of 140,000. So that amount was equaled almost during early voting. And, you know, we haven't heard any numbers as to how many people voted today, but clearly we've set a very new record.
And anecdotally, we're hearing that early voting results were delayed in terms of its release because so many people were still in line at some of the polls. So that bodes well for the numbers of voting day participants as well.
That is correct. The law requires us to withhold those numbers until the polls are closed, all of them. And that's what our elections administrator did. And people were still voting all the way up to 7:45, I believe.
Interesting. Now, Hidalgo County isn't unique in terms of breaking election records this year. It turns out that, at least in early voting, of all the top 15 counties, the most populous counties in Texas, most, if not all, broke early voting records. To what do you attribute that?
Well, I know that clearly the number one issue is the presidential race. I mean, I can't remember a race that has been so closely followed, and the issues that kept coming up almost on a daily basis changed from one to the next. And clearly the community became very much aware of the issues, and the issues clearly showed that as a country, we're very divided, and we're no different than the rest of the country.
Okay.
And so that issue, that presidential race, is what brought people out to vote, and the fact that we're largely an Hispanic community was another factor. I mean, the Hispanics are having a very a tremendous night throughout the country, all throughout the Southwest, throughout Florida, and North Carolina and other states where the community is beginning to grow. They for whatever reason all came out to vote. And, I guess we have to attribute that to Donald Trump for energizing our community.
And that's something you're old hand at this. There's been a joke in past elections with regard to Hispanic turnout. As you'll recall, Newsweek magazine declared 1980 the decade of the Hispanics, and they never fully fulfilled their voting potential. This year seems to be a different story. Would you agree with that assessment?
Very much so.
Okay. And what are the implications for that? If we are finally at the table now and a force to be reckoned with, what does that suggest?
Well, I don't think we're there yet, but we're about to get invited to be a member of that proverbial table, and which I think it's a very important factor for our community to be able to achieve progress in the future.
Now, one thing, and I know you've been fairly quiet about this race with regard to Proposition 1, that's also a force that proponents have said is something that would contribute to the economic development of this community. Such a significant defeat, what does that suggest, and what does that bode for the county in the future?
Well, clearly the community has spoken on this one issue involving a healthcare district. No, obviously, it clearly means no. And the numbers clearly show that. What is it, 72 or 73 to 27% is a clear victory.
And it is a clear victory on one sense, a clear defeat on the other. It's the second defeat of its nature in the last 2 years for either a healthcare district or a hospital district. I know that San Antonio historically went to the voters at least 3 times. Do you anticipate another round of request for some sort of district that would deal with indigent healthcare here in Hidalgo County?
I think the proponents have to think about it long and hard before they sign up to do this again. I mean, the community has spoken. I spoke once, and now it clearly is speaking again, but in higher and record numbers. A taxing district is not something that they wanted to see, at least not now.
Do you see any implications as it stands for either the cost of indigent health care, particularly because it goes back to the county in terms of being responsible for
Well,
it?
the county's meeting all its obligations. I know there's been discussions back and forth throughout this period, but we are meeting all our obligations to provide health care to the indigent community. Anybody that has met the qualifications to be declared indigent, that has needed health care, the county has stepped in and paid for the medical that's required by state law.
But there are deep implications with this vote for the underinsured. Is that not correct?
Correct. Well, the uncompensated care is the big hole that was the big issue that people are wanting to be addressed.
And the other part of that formula, the 1115 waiver, is something that I guess is something we have to wait on until we find out who becomes our next president.
Well, the 1115 waiver this year is there. Next year appears to also be there. And after that, you're correct. Depends on what the federal government does.
Excellent. Is there any surprises so far this evening? I know it's early as it relates to Hidalgo County and election night, but is there anything that has struck out with you about this year's election?
Well, I know that the state representative race, Bobby Guerra's race, with Hilda Garza de Chazo, that turned out to be a more hotly contested race than was initially anticipated, and the numbers appear to be showing that it's a pretty close race.
It's a close race. Do you think it's an insurmountable race with the results right now, 55 to 44?
No, I don't see that as being insurmountable. Not at this point.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, Judge Garcia. And that'll leave us. We'll be back later as we go to election headquarters for Vicente Gonzalez at closer to the top or the bottom of the hour. And we will have an opportunity to talk to him as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos.
All right.
I got
Vicente
it.
Gonzalez at closer to the top or the bottom of the hour. And
Those are my numbers.
Thank you.
All right, we're back again, and now we're going to have an interview with UT-RGV Assistant Professor, Dr. Angel Saavedra Cisneros. I hope I said that right. I was going to have trouble with the Saavedra name.
No problem.
How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. Enjoying this.
Yeah. Do you get excited for election night just because you're a UT-RGV political science professor?
Yeah, it's exciting. It's fun. I mean, it is draining, right? So we've, this June 16th, it's been a long process, but I think many of us are excited and at the same time a little relieved that it's kind of coming to an end.
All right, so I have just a couple questions just about the local races. Well, first, just about the voter turnout. It was an overwhelming turnout for Hidalgo County. What do you think it just says about the voter turnout? Well, what do you attribute that to?
I think there's two factors, right? One is basic demographic factor, right? So most people in Hidalgo County we're younger than the average nationwide. We're heavily Latino. Latinos have or Hispanic, and we have a large amount of people who are young. So a lot of us are only coming into the voting age recently. And so I think that that's something we can't ignore, but also there was a very strong turnout effort. So both the Democratic Party, get out the vote efforts, a lot of campaigns were actually working to try to get people to turn out to vote. So I think that's part of it. In my own research, I've been trying to see if Donald Trump was a factor, and I haven't actually been able to find anything conclusive yet. I just conducted a whole bunch of interviews again, and so we might have some more data in the following days to talk about that. But I did not see Donald Trump as being a motivating factor for Latinos to get out and vote.
Okay, so do you think it may have been Prop 1 that was hotly contested here? Do you think that could have been the factor, or you just think that more Hispanics are going out to vote? Because in other parts of the country too, Nevada, Florida, it seems like Hispanics are coming out to vote.
Yeah, I think it's more of a trend, right? I mean, I was wrong about Prop 1. I felt that all the efforts, I mean, spending over $600,000 on this proposition might have actually led a lot of people to come out and vote. But I think that it is a general trend, right? I think that Latinos are waking up. We're starting to vote. We are still the demographic group that votes the least in this country, and so hopefully that starts to change and more Latinos turn out to vote.
And well, that's a good transition to Prop 1. So you said you were surprised. You actually thought Prop 1 would win, and some of the early numbers right now it sounds
yes, I was actually thinking that it might actually win very, very close. I mean, the expenditures, right? So the vote yes outspent the vote no 3-1, right? They spent about $600,000 on this, more than $500,000, and the other group spent about $200,000. So it's just going by general research that shows us that if you spend more money, you're more likely to win. I was expecting it at least to be tight, but the numbers are crucial, right? And this actually leads to a very, very interesting race for House seat 41, right? Because that district should not have been a toss-up, and now it's actually pretty close. And this is I think really interesting from the perspective of policy or issue-based campaigning versus just the traditional thing that we get is just the picture, right? We get a billboard, a picture, and a name. And in this case, the Republican candidate was based on one single issue.
Yeah.
Probably something.
Yeah. Well, what do you say about the electric? Because I mean, this is the second time Prop 1 looks like it's going to be defeated. The second time they a couple years ago was on the ballot and it was defeated. Also, McAllen had a couple years ago also the McAllen bond issue, and that also had to do with taxes and raising taxes for McAllen ISD. What do you think it says about electric? Are we just against here in Hidalgo County against taxes, or is it just those propositions were just too controversial and people didn't understand them very well?
I think it's a mix of both things. You hit it right on. There's two things, right? One, people really didn't know what was going on, and the Monitor did a really good job at trying to get more information out there. But I think this was the concern, right? And in my column, I actually said that we need to know who this money is going to help. And there were a lot of pleas on behalf of the university, but it was unclear how this money was going to be redistributed and actually what the final tax levy would be, right? So we knew the initial one, and then it was cents over $100 valuation, but that doesn't say much to voters, because the promise was we will reduce tax and other things, but they're agencies. So how is the county going to justify, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to reduce your taxes when these other people might keep it at 8, increase to 10. So I think there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of lack of information, but also you're right. I think that even though we vote Democrat here in the RGV in general, we are pretty conservative when we compare these Democratic voters to Democratic voters in other parts of the state and in other parts of the country.
And before I let you go, I have to ask you this. I know we were supposed to just talk about local politics, but right now the race for the presidential race is very, very close. What do you think about what do you think the outcome is going to be?
As everyone will probably tell you, it's too close to call, but I actually Trump appears to be doing much better than expected. So Florida is leaning towards Trump pretty heavily right now. And I mean, we still have a couple, well, not a couple, we still have about a 250,000 votes to be tallied, but it's close. It's much closer than a lot of people would have predicted. And I think that if Donald Trump wins North Carolina, if he wins Virginia, and if he wins Florida, he might actually have a pretty good chance of winning it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. And stay tuned with us. We'll have another interview coming up shortly. Thank you.
You're gonna be on. You're gonna be where I am. You're gonna be where I am over here. It's just gonna be you, and you're gonna put these headphones on right now, and we're gonna patch you into the, I think, to Carlos. Let me get this right. You should be good right there. There you go. There you go. I think you just talk to him. They'll sort of brief you as to what's going on.
Carlos.
Vicente, how are you?
Hey, pretty good. How are you today?
I am well, thanks. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
We are live. My name is Carlos Sanchez. Welcome back to the Monitor Newsroom. We have with us, is it Congressman-elect Vicente Gonzalez? Have you declared victory yet?
Well, I'm declaring it now.
Okay. Well, then congratulations to Congressman-elect Vicente Gonzalez. Early margins after early voting results have been released suggest an insurmountable margin that Vicente Gonzalez has in relation to his opponent, Tim Wesley, who lives at the opposite end of this expansive district and whose numbers just don't match the numbers that exist here in Hidalgo County. Congressman or Congressman-elect, what is your priority now going into the post-election period and the transition is scheduled for the end of the year?
Well, between now and the end of the year, I intend to get together with elected officials from every county and every city and every school district throughout my district and listen to what issues are important to them and what do they need and what can I do for them at the federal level, what resources can I be helpful with from Washington down here. And I'd like to start asking those questions and preparing ahead of time.
Now, Congressman-elect, one thing that has emerged tonight is a very decisive no as it relates to Proposition 1 in the issue of indigent health care here in Hidalgo County. One thing that has been kind of a lifeline in the past couple of years is federal subsidies in the form of what's called 1115 waivers. Those are set to go away in the next 18 months or so. Is it now something that is on your plate to try to maintain, or do you see an option in terms of federal government help for local indigent health care?
Well, I think we need to try to get an extension on the 1115 waivers. We also need to try to pressure our state government to expand Medicaid and alleviate some of the issues that have affected the state, particularly our area here in South Texas.
Now, a lot of surprise tonight at how close the national election is at the presidential level. Can I get your reaction thus far to the tightness of the race between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump?
That's tough. It's a really tough election. I'm very concerned. I certainly will keep my heart and prayer open that Hillary Clinton is victorious tonight. I think a Trump presidency would be a travesty for our country, and I still continue being optimistic that she comes out ahead and makes it through this.
Have you been in touch yet with the man to whom you're replacing, Ruben Hinojosa?
Yes, actually, he's here attending my victory party. So yeah, we've been in touch and we've been talking for past few months, and he's been very helpful. Thank God.
Well, once again, congratulations to Congressman-elect Vicente Gonzalez.
Thank you very much, Carlos. I appreciate it. There we go.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back with another interview with a UTRGV assistant professor of political science, Dr. Natasha Altima McNeely. Did I get that right?
Yes, yes. Hi, Peter.
Hi, how you doing?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm pretty good. Are you excited about tonight? Because you're really into political science, so you probably had to be really excited, right?
I am pretty excited. It's, of course, like everybody else, just waiting, another 4 years. We're here on election day, on possibly the brink of history, and ultimately on the brink of a form of change, if you will. So it is pretty exciting.
Pretty exciting. Now, the big news right now is that Trump's doing pretty well. I don't think a lot of people expected him to be doing this well in these battleground states, and it's really, really close. What do you make of it?
Well, at this time, as you said, it's still pretty close. And as I'm watching the election coverage, we're still waiting on some final numbers from some states, of course. And of course, on the West Coast, several of the polls are still open. And at this point in time, it's, you might say it's anyone's guess, really. But again, the numbers will ultimately decide the outcome. So just like everybody else, I'm kind of waiting to see what will continue to happen as the night progresses.
Yeah, but are you surprised at all just how well Trump's doing? And the reason I say that just because going into tonight, a lot of people have predicted Hillary to win these battleground states, and he's up in quite a few of them, if not all of them.
Right. So, in my opinion, one of the more surprising of the battleground states is how well he's doing in Virginia. Because going into tonight, my understanding, based on what I had seen, was that Virginia might actually go Democrat on Hillary's behalf. And to see that as of now, he is leading in Virginia, to me, that's the surprising element. However, some of the other battleground states, being Florida, North Carolina, to hear that he is leading in those states, not so surprising, mainly because historically, as southern states, we've seen them go Republican. And so I think with the fact that they are leaning towards Trump's favor at this point in time, we don't necessarily have to be as surprised per se, again, because historically and in recent elections as well, we've seen them go Republican.
Yeah, and what did you make of the ugliness of the race? Obviously politics is ugly. This one got really nasty. What did you make of it? Is this among the ugliest races ever in presidential history?
I don't know if it's necessarily one of the ugliest, but it's right up there, right? In some of the previous races, we've seen a lot of contention between the candidates. We've seen some more controversial uses of some strategies among the candidates. What comes to mind is former President Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, and his use of the Willie Horton ads to emphasize against his opponent at the time, former Governor Michael Dukakis, that this racial element, that Michael Dukakis had released a prisoner, Willie Horton, who had in fact committed more crimes after. So that was pretty ugly. But as you say, Peter, the ugliness, especially in this election, is this what seems to be this lack of respect between the two candidates. Of course, as a female candidate, former Secretary Clinton, has encountered a lot of bias that we do see facing a lot of female candidates. across all races, and a lot of that bias really was evident, especially during the debates. So that,
Yeah.
in my opinion, that kind of helped to contribute to the ugliness as well.
Well, what do you think it says about the electorate? And even now, it's very close. What do you think it says about just the electorate in general, that you're saying there was some bias and the way she was treated during the debates and some of the things that Trump has said, and maybe even talking about her emails. What does it say about the electorate that it's so close, and maybe it's just a divide of America, and we're just going to continue to have these presidential races that are always going to be this close?
Well, I think it really emphasizes that the electorate, especially Mr. Trump supporters, really are seeking change. Many have indicated that they really want a change from what they perceive to be the problems with the status quo, and they really want to see something different. In Mr. Trump, they view a possible candidate who will challenge what has already been going on among the political elite in Washington, D.C. They really think that he's really going to promote their interests that they feel haven't been promoted adequately by politicians on both sides. I do think that it really does, as you say, speak to the division that we do see in America as well. There's a large element of racial division. There's a large element of this gender division as well, especially when we look at some of the comments that have been made against women, against minorities as well, and how accepted those comments have been. So I really do think that really does support this idea of a divided America. But at the end of the day, people who support Mr. Trump really are seeking, and they're really seeking a form of change.
One of the things that's bothered me has been the length of this election. I mean, most people start running in like 2015. I mean, people are probably already thinking about 2020.
Yes.
But I mean, you might know this a little bit more because you're more tuned in, and obviously this is your passion. Is there any talk or any thought about that you've heard of shortening the election cycle? I think that played into part of the nastiness and the ugliness. It just kept going on. It seemed like forever to me.
Sure. And you're really tapping into this concept of what's called the invisible primary, in which outside of the presidential election session, which really starts in January of an election year, what we do see, as you said, is that a lot of these candidates who indicated interest in running for office started running in 2015 as part of this invisible primary, right? So they were trying to get people interested in the idea of them running, trying to get people interested in the possibility of donating campaign funding in anticipation of them participating in the actual primary during the election year. And so given that this is sort of the norm, right, that, and as you said, I have seen headlines about people actually starting to think about 2020. Really, it just seems like this is going to be an ongoing trend, especially as we see this outcome of this particular election and people starting to think ahead.
Yeah, and just one last question. I just want to touch a little bit of the Hispanic vote. Obviously, Hidalgo County is heavily Hispanic, and a lot of them came out. And there's a lot of regions, and the Prop 1 was on the ballot, and that was very controversial. But Hispanics seem to have come out also, it looks like, a lot in Florida, and they were talking about it in Nevada as well. Is this just, what do you think of that trend? And is that something that you think is going to continue, and you think Hispanics are wanting to make their voices heard?
I definitely think that this is a trend that is going to keep going, and I personally welcome it. It's really encouraging to see. From my understanding, especially when you look at Arizona and Nevada and Florida, that you do have people of Hispanic descent who had already been registered, but they actually hadn't gone to vote. And really, it's really refreshing to see that they felt so strongly. Again, we don't rate the turnout data yet, but the fact that we do see this fast growing portion of our population expressing interest in voting and actively going to vote is very it's great. And I really do think that this is a trend we're going to see as we continue and as we move forward in subsequent elections as well.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Professor. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you for the opportunity.
No problem. And that will conclude our Monitor Live for this evening. Make sure to download our app if you want any late breaking news tonight. Of course, we're still following all the races here locally and nationally. And as we were talking earlier, the presidential race is pretty close. So just follow themonitor.com for all your news. Thank you.
Thank you.